The Waitress and the Billionaire's Son. 1. A small act of kindness. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the small diner, mingling with the warmth of homemade pancakes. It was just another busy morning shift for Emily Carter, a 27-year-old waitress who had been working at Rosie's Diner since she was 19. Life hadn't been easy for her. Between juggling rent, student loan debts, and caring for her younger brother, she had little time for herself. But she never let that stop her from smiling at every customer who walked in. That morning, an elderly man in a wheelchair struggled to get through the front door. His frail hands trembled as he tried to maneuver himself. Without hesitation, Emily rushed over, holding the door open and gently guiding him to a booth by the window. "Good morning, sir. My name's Emily. Can I get you something warm to drink?" The old man looked up, his deep blue eyes clouded with time. "Coffee, please. Black. No sugar." Emily nodded and quickly returned with a steaming cup. As she placed it before him, she noticed how thin he was, his clothes slightly oversized. Something about him tugged at her heart. "Would you like me to cut your pancakes for you?" she asked gently when his food arrived. The man hesitated, pride flickering in his eyes, but after a moment, he nodded. "Thank you, dear. My hands aren't what they used to be." Emily carefully cut his pancakes into small bites, making sure they were easy to pick up with a fork. "You remind me of my late wife," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "She always helped me, even when I didn't want to admit I needed it." Emily squeezed his hand lightly. "Well, sir, you remind me of my grandfather. He always said a little kindness goes a long way." They talked for a while, and before he left, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill. "I wish I could leave you more," he said, his voice cracking. Emily shook her head, pushing the bill back toward him. "Your company was more than enough. Take care of yourself, okay?" The man's lips quivered in a silent thank you, and then he rolled himself out of the diner. Emily watched him go, feeling an ache in her heart. She hoped he had someone looking out for him. She never expected to see him again. 2. An unexpected visitor. The next evening, after a long shift, Emily had just kicked off her shoes and curled up on her tiny couch when a loud knock echoed through her apartment. Startled, she pulled her sweater tighter around her and opened the door. Standing before her was a sharply dressed man in a tailored suit. His piercing blue eyes, so similar to the old man's, locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Are you Emily Carter?" he asked, his voice deep and controlled. "Yes," she answered cautiously. He exhaled, looking almost relieved. "My name is Daniel Whitmore. My father told me about you." Her brows knitted together. "Your father?" "The elderly man you helped yesterday," Daniel explained. "His name was Thomas Whitmore." Emily's heart clenched. "Was?" she echoed. Daniel swallowed hard. "He passed away last night." A gasp escaped her lips, and tears pricked her eyes. "Oh, my God. I'm so sorry." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "My father was a complicated man. A self-made businessman who built an empire but never cared much for money. After my mother died, he distanced himself from the world, and from me." He sighed. "We hadn't spoken in years. I didn't even know he was back in town until I got a call from the hospital." Emily's throat tightened. "I only met him once, but he seemed kind." "Lonely?" Daniel nodded, pain flickering in his gaze. "He was. But last night, before he passed, he told me about a waitress who treated him like family. He said it was the first time in years someone had shown him kindness without expecting anything in return." Emily wiped a tear from her cheek, speechless. "He left something for you," Daniel continued, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small, handwritten note. Emily took it with trembling hands. "To Emily. In a world that often overlooks the forgotten, you saw me. Thank you for your kindness. It meant more than you know. Thomas Whitmore. Tears spilled freely now. I didn't do anything special, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. You did more than you realize. He hesitated before speaking again. My father may not have cared about money, but he knew its power. And before he died, he made sure that power went to someone who truly deserved it. Emily frowned. What do you mean? Daniel handed her an envelope. Confused, she opened it, and nearly dropped it when she saw the contents. A check. A life-changing amount. Enough to pay off her debts, take care of her brother, and start a new life. This has to be a mistake, she stammered. Daniel shook his head. It's not. My father wanted to repay kindness with kindness. He offered a small smile. And I think he hoped it would remind me to do the same. Emily clutched the letter to her chest, overwhelmed. She had never expected anything in return for helping an old man with his breakfast. But here she was, her life changed in ways she never imagined, because of a single act of kindness. And as she stood there, looking up at the man before her, she realized something profound. Kindness never goes unnoticed. And sometimes, it comes back to you in ways you never expect.